Hello and welcome to Media Week. I'm Dan Murphy. 10 Network has reported a massive net loss of more than $260 million in the first half. That's 33 times the size of the $8 million loss from a year ago. The result was impacted by a $251 million write-down on the value of its television licence. But the broadcaster's performance has also been hit by a weak TV ad market and a bad run of ratings for much of its on-air programming. The company has flagged that it may need to tap capital markets for additional funding. Despite this, the results weren't as bad as many had expected. Revenue beat expectations at $324 million, and there are other signs that the broadcaster may be turning a corner. For more, Media Week editor and publisher James Manning is speaking with 10 Network Executive Chairman and CEO Hamish McLennan.
Welcome back to Sky News Business. I just want to start our talk today asking about the notes that accompanied the release of your profits today, the profit report. You talk very passionately about the need for media law reform. How material is that to 10 going forward, and I guess your colleagues in this?
Yeah, it's a very material impact that it has on the business. The current laws are just ludicrous. They were designed in a pre-Google era, and they're onerous. So for us to just operate effectively, we need the laws to change. So just to try and put it into further context for you, we pay 4.5% of our gross revenue as an additional tax, in my opinion, in licence fees, which amounts to around $30 million for 10 alone, and it's higher for 7 and 9. And so if you think of the state of where the industry is at the moment, we employ thousands of people in this country. We make a cultural contribution that is significant. We employ lots of people in our news divisions. We report on the news. And it's just an onerous environment for us to operate in. And we've been saying this for years and years at the moment. And we're faced with further competition from overseas technology companies that minimise their tax. And we're not operating on a level playing field. And it just has to change. It's madness.
Now, you had a meeting with the Prime Minister. I think it was you, Tim Warner, David Gyngell. Later on, some of the regional affiliates also went in. Yeah. Did you get any real feeling that there could be some change in the air on these matters?
Look, I got a firm sense that the Prime Minister was certainly had a very good grasp of all the issues, understands the complicated nature of where we're at. I don't want to talk about specific things that were said in the meeting, but I think we got a clear indication from his advisors and the Minister as well that licence fees will be looked at, which is an important step. We pay the highest licence fees in the world, and if you compare the Australian free-to-air industry to the UK industry, the UK broadcasters pay about 0.2% as a licence fee, and we pay 4.5%. So I think clearly things need to change, and there's an acknowledgement that it is hurting our industry, our important industry.
You haven't been able to give the market any specifics, understandably, yet about you talking with some potential investors into the business. If you got some of these changes through, would there be more people would there be a bigger range of people you might be able to talk to, do you think, about the future of 10?
Look,
you have that bigger impact?
Look, I don't want to talk about specific discussions that we've had there, but I think the most important thing when you talk about media reform, it just opens up a range of options for the company, and I've been with the company for just over 2 years now, and I've said 10 should look for ways in which it gets scaled. There's nothing groundbreaking or earth-shattering in those comments, other than I've seen it around the world, that you need to look for efficiencies and you need to look for other platforms that you can promote against. What is important, though, I think that if you just look at media licence fees alone, that money will be reinvested back into local content that in turn generates more jobs for Australia. And so that's just an example of the fact that we just need to get these laws changed.
Let's have a look at some of the results specifically today for the 6 months. You're working in a soft TV market. Your revenue was down a little bit. You've had a bit of a ratings lift, which you said is yet to sort of show up in your revenues. What really needs to happen here for you to get into the profit?
Look, I think we've been very transparent with our guidance for a couple of years now. I wouldn't underplay the ratings turnaround. I think it's a significant turnaround for this network. We've just this year alone launched 3 new shows that have all been successfully launched. and that's off the back of the Big Bash, again an investment in local content. And so that's the first time in about 5 years that we've been able to deliver ratings momentum, and we all know that you can't get your revenue up until you get the ratings up. So I think it's important for that to be noted from a market perspective. And the reality is, over the last few years, we've changed our strategy, gone after a older demographic, and we're working out of old production contracts that we have. So it's pleasing to see that we've got this ratings momentum. It's early days. We now need to capitalise on bridging the revenue and the audience gap. But even last month alone, that's the closeness that we got with our power ratio to 1. We delivered a 0.96, which is the highest in 3 years. So they're all gains that I think show that this network can be turned around.
Your board's been reasonably patient, I guess. What's the feeling like when you talk to them about the road you're on?
I think the board's been very realistic. I mean, I was very clear to yourself, actually 2 years ago when I started, that 15 would be the year in which we'd start to see some ratings momentum. And we're delivering on that. So I think if you just look at our major shareholder base, they're sophisticated media investors. They understand the dynamics in the industry. It takes a while to turn a business like this around. Obviously, we're dealing with a lot of factors out there in the market, from media reform to the relative softness in the market. But the simple fact is that 10 is the only network to grow and the only primary channel to grow. And we're getting some good ratings momentum. Now, we clearly have to keep that going for the rest of the year, but I look to the new slate of programming that we've got. We've got MasterChef that has been rebooted. That launches next week. We've got The Bachelor, Bachelorette, Goggleboxes coming back. We've got TBL Families. We've got great content that gives me hope that we'll be able to keep this ratings momentum going for the rest of the year.
You mentioned ratings momentum, and it came up a fair bit this morning in the presentation too. And I don't want to ask you, you're not the right person to ask about specific programming, I guess, but some of that momentum was generated by I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, which gave you a good start to the year. Seems to have faded off a bit before MasterChef launched. It seems a pity those two shows couldn't back up, but there was some heavy competition. Will you look at that for next year? Or
yeah, no, absolutely. Look, we always knew that this would probably be one of the more difficult parts of our year, I guess, in between. And I think our competitors, namely Seven with My Kitchen Rules, have sort of, stretched out My Kitchen Rules. So we always knew that was going to happen, but that's the dynamic market that we live in. But the simple fact is, even in this intervening period, our ratings are up year on year. So we've been able to deliver that growth still in a very difficult environment. So I think it's an important thing for us to note.
I don't think you've officially recommissioned I'm a Celebrity. You can't give us that little scoop today or anything?
I think we just need to tidy up a few loose ends, but we feel very positive about that particular show. And don't forget, if you look at the success of shows like My Kitchen Rules and MasterChef, it takes a couple of years to establish the format, refine it, bed it in and get viewer engagement. So the fact that I'm a Celebrity did so well in year one is very, very encouraging. And I'd like to think that it would be back next year, James.
You've had good close ties with Shine Australia. Yeah. The Fennessy brothers seem to have been very good for the network in terms of program delivery. Yeah. Any concern that they're going to be leaving the business shortly and what that means for you longer term?
Look, all of our relationships are with the corporation, with the company, but they're two very talented guys, and we've had a long history of working closely together with them. I've stated that I would rather if they stayed at Shine, but it opens up a new opportunity for them and us as they set up their new business. But we're very loyal to Shine, the corporation. We've got a lot of ongoing work with them, and I think it's important actually for 10 to have multiple relationships with production companies, which is why you're seeing us do a lot more work with ITV, and I'm a Celebrity is a case in point. We've got a very deep relationship with Fremantle, so we're spreading our production dollars amongst a range of different production companies, including Cordell Jigsaw, who do Bondi Rescue for us. So it's important for us to hedge our bets.
That you reiterated the 10 strategy, the event TV, the live sport, very key. It's also the strategy of, I guess, 7 and 9 these days. It's very core to the free TV offering. 7 and 9 have sort of been amassing a bit of a war chest lately, if you like, very, very recently with a couple of deals. How's 10 going to be able to play in that space?
Well, I think what you're referring to is the AFL and the NRL. So if you just look historically at what we've done, we picked up the Sochi Winter Olympics at a fair price and were competitive in securing that. That drove good ratings and a good share in February of last year for us. We were able to pick up and I think create a terrific tournament with the Big Bash. We were able to sneak in and get V8 supercars, and then we've renewed the Formula One deal. So we've, in very different circumstances, been able to find creative solutions to getting those sports. It's true that we're at the moment, we lack a big winter sport in the middle of the year, but we need to be formally briefed by the NRL and the AFL, and we like both sports. We think they represent a great opportunity for this network, and we've previously been there with the AFL. So we know what sport can do to the company, but we just need to get the brief and see what partnerships we can form if we need to.
I mean, you partnered 9, you've partnered 7 in previous AFL deals. Have you been chatting to them at all before you get into...
Oh, look, I wouldn't disclose any specifics in that regard, but we're open to working with anyone.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about 10 Play today, the good signs about increased advertising revenue. Yeah. What could 10 Play turn into? I mean, you see 7's involved in Presto, 9's involved with Stan. Could there be any SVOD play down the track for something like 10 Play, or is it strictly a catch-up?
No, look, it's definitely got the potential to do that. But I think the SVOD play in this market still has quite a long way to run at the moment, and I'm not sure there's room for 3 players. So you would know that we've deliberately sat on the fence to just see how it will play out. 10 Play is a very important part of our overall offering. So just the data that we're getting from the programs that we're running on this catch-up service is terrific. So we're combining the reach that we get with the free-to-air terrestrial signal with 10 Play, and it's unique. It's growing very, very quickly for us, albeit off a low base. But we always stated that we need to be there with a platform that's robust and working well, and we'll see how far it will grow. It's exceeded our expectations, and on some shows we're seeing massive viewership of that particular platform. But it's digital, so you've got to be in there and you've got to experiment with it and learn from it.
Your salespeople probably think sometimes, look, it's not fair, we're getting all this audience growth, but it's a very tough market out there, so we can't capitalise on it straight away. You talked about the time lag. When do you think you might see some improved sales revenues? I guess there's some mid-years negotiations probably underway now. Could that help you a little?
Look, we're already seeing it drift upwards, and I think January is a great case in point where we did a 24.7% share, which is really pleasing, and that's historically high. I referenced the fact that just last month our power ratio was getting close to 1, which is good. And then as we look forward, the most important thing is that you just deliver ratings growth, and that's arguably the hardest thing to do. And we've been able to do it with smaller budgets compared to 7 and 9. And we've had a very high success rate of late. So as you look forward, it's a dynamic market. It's very competitive. We've got strong competitors with 7 and 9. But I think the early indications are we're heading in the right direction, and we just need to maintain our focus.
Ongoing cost control, you mentioned that this morning. Yeah. Are you sort of running at a pretty close to the bare minimum now? Is there much further to go on that, or have you just got to keep things where they are?
No, we've got to keep things where we're at. I mean, it's part of our DNA. We've always been the lowest cost free-to-air network. I actually think it's an advantage for us, and we just look at things differently. And I think the successful news restructure that we did last year is proof that we can run that whole division and still maintain our ratings, and it's a great product that we put to air every night. But it's an ongoing part of what we do. It's part of our own company ethos. So we will just continue to focus on costs as part of everything that we do.
Yes, and then Peter Meakin came in to work on your news. Yeah. We haven't seen big changes there. Was he frustrated at all, do you think, by you? He sort of came in at a time when you sort of were cutting back Are there things he'd like to do if he had a bit more money? Could we see changes there in the future?
Oh, look, Peter is sort of weaving his magic where he can. If you look at just the project, which is one of the shows that he looks after, we're up 10% year on year. And, he's a very savvy operator. I think the good thing with Peter is that he's been around the traps for so many years that he knows that it goes in cycles. So he's been nothing but supportive and a welcome addition to the team.
Yeah. Just finish up maybe, just again, you've confirmed that Foxtel's one of the people you've been talking to. Yeah. Where can you see it? Is there any time scale on that? I mean...
No, look, I don't want to talk beyond the ASX announcements that we put out there. We've looked at a range of options, is all that I'll say. And I think the board of directors of 10 is just very focused on doing a deal that's right for 10 if we need to. But, it could be that there's just the status quo. And that's really all I have to say. We'll continue to fix the business as we see fit and hopefully continue the ratings momentum that we've got.
Yeah, so there's even a good... You're quite confident about the future with or without a new partner coming in?
I wouldn't be here if I didn't feel confident about the future. So, we all have our challenges in traditional media, and I think that's why we've been so keen to get these media laws relaxed or changed, and we need the government's support to be able to do it because we're fighting with one arm tied behind our back, and it's just not fair when you look at the competitive landscape out there.
Hamish, thanks for talking to us today.
Thank you very much.
Back to you, Dan.
James Manning speaking with Hamish McLennan. Time for a break. You are watching Media Week. Stay with us.